He held her hand right in front of me, at my own sister's wedding. Everyone told Charlotte she was paranoid. They told her that Rylan was just a dedicated boss and that Vanessa was just a hard-working assistant. But when Rylan insisted on bringing his colleague to the most intimate family gathering of the year, Charlotte felt a cold knot tighten in her stomach. She expected humiliation. She expected whispers. But she never expected the priest, a man of God sworn to peace, to stop the ceremony, point a trembling finger at the pews, and reveal a secret so dark it would shatter 3 families in an instant. You think you know what cheating looks like? You have no idea. The morning of the wedding, the sky over Seattle was a bruised purple, threatening rain that never seemed to fall. It matched the color of the circles under Charlotte's eyes. She sat at her vanity, staring at her reflection. At 34, Charlotte was still beautiful, with sharp cheekbones and eyes the color of polished mahogany, but the spark had gone out of them. Behind her, the reflection of her husband, Rylan, moved through the room like a storm front. He was fastening his cufflinks, his movements sharp and agitated. "I still don't understand why she has to come, Rylan," Charlotte said, her voice steady, though her hands trembled as she applied her lipstick. "It's Emily's wedding. It's family only. My parents paid for a specific head count." Rylan didn't even look up. "We've been over this, Charlotte. The merger with the distinctive firm is happening Monday. Vanessa and I have files to review the second the reception wraps up. I'm not driving 2 hours back to the city just to drive back out. She rides with us. She attends. We work. It's efficiency. Stop being so insecure." Insecure. That was his favorite word lately. For the past 6 months, Vanessa had been the ghost haunting their marriage. She was 24, fresh out of business school, with the kind of hungry ambition that men like Rylan mistook for competence. She called at 10 p.m. She needed rides to the airport. She needed mentorship over dinner. "She's an assistant, Rylan," Charlotte said, turning on the stool. "She isn't a +1. This is my sister's wedding. Do you know how disrespectful it looks to bring your secretary to a black tie family event?" Rylan finally looked at her. His eyes, once warm and blue, were now cold steel. "She is an associate director now, Charlotte. Show some respect. And frankly, having someone intelligent to talk to might make the night bearable. You know how your mother gets." He grabbed his suit jacket and walked out of the bedroom. The door didn't slam, but the click of the latch felt final. Charlotte sat there, the silence ringing in her ears. She looked at the invitation on the dresser. The wedding of Emily Rose and Lucas Darrow. St. Jude's Cathedral. Emily, her younger sister, was the golden child. This was supposed to be the happiest day of the year. Charlotte had bought a navy silk gown, understated and elegant, perfect for the matron of honor. She wanted to disappear into the background and let Emily shine. But Rylan was bringing a spotlight. When they went downstairs to the car, the spotlight was already waiting. Vanessa was standing in their driveway, leaning against Rylan's black Mercedes. She wasn't wearing office attire. She wasn't wearing associate director clothes. She was wearing a floor-length gown, and it wasn't just any gown. It was a pale, shimmering champagne gold. In the overcast light, it looked dangerously, aggressively close to white. It was backless, plunging, and covered in sequins that caught every stray photon of light. Charlotte froze on the porch steps. "Good morning, Charlotte," Vanessa chirped. Her voice was like syrup, sweet but thick and cloying. "Rylan said it was black tie, so I thought I'd dress up. Hope you don't mind." Charlotte gripped her purse so hard the leather creaked. "It's a morning ceremony, Vanessa. That's an evening gown." "Oh, but the reception goes all night, doesn't it?" Vanessa smiled, showing perfect veneered teeth. She opened the back door of the car, then paused. "Actually, Rylan, do you mind if I sit up front? I get terrible motion sickness in the back." Rylan didn't even hesitate. "Of course. Charlotte, you're fine in the back, right? You have more leg room for your dress. He said dress with a subtle sneer, as if Charlotte's elegant navy silk was a potato sack compared to Vanessa's disco ball. Charlotte stood there for a second, the humiliation washing over her like cold water. The neighbors were watching. Mrs. Higgins across the street had stopped watering her hydrangeas. "Fine," Charlotte whispered. She climbed into the back seat of her own husband's car. As they pulled out of the driveway, she watched Rylan and Vanessa in the front. Vanessa reached over to adjust the radio, her hand lingering on the dial, inches from Rylan's knee. Rylan laughed at something she said, a deep belly laugh Charlotte hadn't heard in years. Charlotte looked out the window at the passing grey blur of the highway. She touched the gold band on her finger. Just get through the day, she told herself. Don't make a scene. Do it for Emily. But the scene was already being set. She just didn't know the script yet. St. Jude's Cathedral was an architectural masterpiece of stone and stained glass, looming over the hill. It was the kind of place where old money whispered and reputations were currency. The parking lot was filling with high-end luxury cars. Emily's fiancé, Lucas Darrow, came from a family that owned half the real estate in the state. This wasn't just a wedding. It was a merger of dynasties. Rylan parked the car. Before the engine had even fully cut out, he was out the door and walking around to the passenger side to open it for Vanessa. Charlotte let herself out of the back seat. Her heels crunched on the gravel. "Rylan," Charlotte said, keeping her voice low as they walked towards the massive oak doors. "Please, just keep a professional distance. My parents are going to be stressed enough." Rylan adjusted his tie, looking over Charlotte's head. "Stop managing me, Charlotte. You're being hysterical." Vanessa fell into step beside Rylan, slipping her arm through his. "Don't worry, Charlotte. We'll be on our best behavior." She didn't let go of his arm. As they entered the vestibule, the air changed. It was cool and smelled of frankincense and lilies. Guests were milling about, signing the guest book. The moment they walked in, heads turned. It wasn't because of Rylan, who looked dashing in his tuxedo. It was Vanessa, in the subdued lighting of the church. Her champagne dress looked practically bridal. It was tight, revealing, and completely inappropriate for a Catholic ceremony. "Is that," Charlotte heard her Aunt Karen whisper loudly to a cousin, "is that the bride?" "No, Emily is in the back." "Who is that?" "That's Rylan's colleague," someone else whispered. The word colleague was dripping with sarcasm. Charlotte felt the heat rise in her cheeks. She walked quickly to the front, where her mother, Margaret, was organizing the ushers. Margaret was a formidable woman, a matriarch who could freeze water with a look. When she saw Charlotte, her face softened, but then her eyes snapped to Rylan and Vanessa standing near the holy water font. Margaret's eyes narrowed into slits. "Charlotte," she hissed, pulling her daughter aside, "why is that woman wearing a wedding dress? And why is she holding your husband's arm?" "It's champagne, Mum," Charlotte said weakly. "And she's his associate. They have to work later." "Work?" Margaret scoffed. "She looks like she's working on becoming the next Mrs. Anderson. Does Rylan have a death wish? Bringing a mistress to a Darrow wedding?" "She's not his mistress," Charlotte lied, though the words tasted like ash. "Please, Mum, not now. Emily is about to walk down the aisle." Margaret straightened Charlotte's necklace, her eyes full of pity. "Oh, honey, you're the only one who doesn't see it. Or maybe you're the only one pretending not to." Just then, the organ music swelled. The signal to be seated. Charlotte, as matron of honor, had to go to the vestry to help Emily with her veil. "I have to go," she said. "Rylan, you sit in the third pew. Family side." "Actually," Rylan said, his voice carrying over the crowd, "Vanessa doesn't know anyone. I'm going to sit with her near the middle so she's not uncomfortable. The third pew is reserved for the brother-in-law of the bride," Charlotte said through gritted teeth. "I'm sure your cousin Greg can take my spot." "Come on, Ness," Rylan said. He placed a hand on the small of Vanessa's back. too low, too familiar, and guided her towards the general seating. Charlotte watched them go. He had chosen a random seat with his assistant over his place of honor beside his wife's family. She fought back tears, took a deep breath, and walked into the vestry. Emily was standing there, looking like a vision in lace and tulle. She was glowing. "Char!" Emily squealed. "Do I look okay? Is my hair holding?" "You look perfect," Charlotte said, forcing a smile. She couldn't ruin this. She couldn't tell Emily that her brother-in-law was currently sitting in the nave playing footsie with a woman dressed like a runner-up bride. "Where's Rylan?" Emily asked, looking around. "Is he ready to do the reading?" Charlotte froze. She had forgotten. Rylan was supposed to do the second reading, 1 Corinthians. Love is patient, love is kind. He's seated, Charlotte stammered. "He's a bit under the weather. Throat issue. He asked if Cousin Greg could do it." Emily frowned, a shadow crossing her face. "Oh, okay. That's disappointing. But Greg is fine." The procession began. The flower girls, the bridesmaids, and finally, Charlotte. She walked down the aisle, holding her bouquet of white roses. She kept her eyes forward, fixed on the altar. But she could feel them. Halfway down the aisle, she glanced to her left. There they were, Rylan and Vanessa. They were sitting in the aisle seat. Rylan had his arm draped over the back of the pew, his fingers brushing Vanessa's bare shoulder. Vanessa was whispering something in his ear, giggling, in the middle of the procession. Charlotte saw her father, walking Emily down the aisle behind her, stiffen. He had seen them too. The tension in the church was palpable. It wasn't just a wedding anymore. It was a spectacle. People weren't looking at the bride. They were darting glances at the man in the 5th row, stroking the arm of the woman in gold. Charlotte reached the altar and took her place. She looked at Lucas, the groom. He looked nervous, happy. Then she looked at the priest, Father Thomas. He was an older man, perhaps in his late 60s, with a face carved from granite and eyes that had seen everything. He was a visiting priest, an old friend of Lucas's family from Boston, brought in specifically for this high-profile ceremony. He wasn't the local jolly vicar. He was serious, stern. As Father Thomas watched the guests settle, his eyes scanned the congregation. He smiled at the bride. He nodded to the groom. And then his gaze stopped. Charlotte saw it happen. Father Thomas was looking directly at the 5th row. His eyes narrowed. He took off his glasses, cleaned them on his vestment, and put them back on. He looked again. His face didn't just harden. It went pale. He stared at Vanessa. Then he looked at Rylan. Then back to Vanessa. Father Thomas closed the heavy leather Bible on the lectern. He didn't open it to the service passage. He kept his hand resting on the cover, his knuckles turning white. The music faded. The church went silent. Usually the priest would begin with, "Dearly beloved." Father Thomas did not say that. He stepped out from behind the pulpit. He walked down the 3 marble steps to the floor of the nave. The silence was heavy, suffocating. Even the babies stopped crying. He walked slowly down the aisle, his robes swishing softly. Charlotte's heart hammered against her ribs. What is he doing? Is something wrong with the ritual? Father Thomas stopped exactly at the 5th pew. He loomed over Rylan and Vanessa. Rylan looked up, annoyed. "Can we help you, Father?" Rylan whispered, arrogant as ever. Father Thomas ignored Rylan. He looked straight at Vanessa, who was suddenly looking much less confident. She pulled her shawl up to cover her cleavage, shrinking back. "I know you," Father Thomas said. His voice wasn't loud, but in the acoustic perfection of the cathedral it sounded like thunder. Vanessa laughed nervously. "I don't think so, Father. I'm from California." "I know you," the priest repeated, louder this time. He pointed a finger at her. "And I know the man sitting next to you is not your husband, just as the man in Boston was not your husband." A collective gasp ripped through the church. Ryland stood up, his face red. "Now listen here. This is outrageous. We are guests." "You are no guest," Father Thomas boomed. his voice shaking with a righteous fury that made the stained glass rattle. "You are a thief, and you," he turned his blazing eyes on Rylan, "you have brought a viper into the house of the Lord and seated her beside you while your wife stands at the altar." Oh! Charlotte stopped breathing. Father Thomas turned to the congregation, his voice trembling with adrenaline. "I cannot perform this ceremony," he declared, "not while she sits there, because I have a duty to the truth. And the truth is, this woman is currently wanted by the authorities in Massachusetts for bigamy and fraud." The silence that followed Father Thomas's declaration was absolute. It was a vacuum, sucking the air out of the cathedral. For 3 seconds, no one moved. No one breathed. Then chaos. "What did you say?" Rylan barked, his voice cracking. He tried to muster his usual corporate authority, the kind that silenced boardrooms, but it withered under the ancient, vaulted ceiling. "You're senile. This is harassment." "Bigamy?" The whisper started in the front row with Charlotte's mother and spread like wildfire back through the pews. "Fraud?" Vanessa wasn't looking at Rylan anymore. She wasn't looking at the priest. Her eyes were darting toward the side exits, the exit signs glowing red in the dim light. Her confident, syrupy demeanor had evaporated. In its place was the feral look of a trapped animal. "I'm leaving," Vanessa hissed, grabbing her purse. She stood up, her champagne sequins clattering. "Sit down." Father Thomas didn't yell, but his voice, Tisan, carried the weight of a gavel strike. He blocked the aisle with his body. "The police were called the moment I recognized you from the diocese bulletin. They are waiting outside the vestibule." Rylan turned to Vanessa, confusion warring with his anger. "Ness, what is he talking about? Tell him he's crazy." Vanessa looked at Rylan, and for the first time, Charlotte saw the mask slip completely. The adoration, the mentorship, the wide-eyed assistant act. It was gone. Vanessa looked at Rylan with sneering contempt. "Move, old man," Vanessa spat at the priest, trying to shove past him. But Lucas Darrow, the groom, was already moving. He vaulted over the communion rail, his tuxedo tails flying, and sprinted down the aisle. Lucas was a former college linebacker, broad-shouldered and imposing. He reached the 5th pew just as Vanessa tried to bolt. He didn't touch her, but he stood squarely in her path, flanked by 2 of his groomsmen who had followed his lead. "Nobody is leaving until we sort this out," Lucas said, his voice low and dangerous. "You just ruined my bride's entrance. You're going to wait for the cops." Rylan shoved Lucas. "Get out of my way, Darrow. You can't hold us here." Lucas didn't budge. He just looked at Rylan with pity. "Rylan, look at her face. Look at her." Rylan turned back to Vanessa. She wasn't looking at him for protection. She was frantically texting on her phone, her fingers flying, sweat beading on her forehead. "Vanessa?" Rylan asked, his voice smaller now. "Shut up, Rylan," she snapped, not looking up. "You useless idiot. You said this was a quiet family wedding. You didn't say the priest was from Boston." The color drained from Rylan's face. It was as if he had been slapped. At the altar, Charlotte stood frozen. Her bouquet was shaking so hard, petals were falling to the floor. Emily grabbed her hand, squeezing it tight. "Char," Emily whispered, "did you know?" I didn't," Charlotte stammered. "I swear." The heavy oak doors at the back of the church creaked open. 2 uniformed police officers stepped in, followed by a man in a plain suit. The detective. The detective walked briskly down the aisle, his shoes clicking on the stone. He nodded to Father Thomas. "Thank you, Father. We've been looking for Miss Valerius for 3 months." "Valerius?" Rylan whispered. "Her name is Vanessa Tate." The detective stopped in front of the pew. He pulled a pair of handcuffs from his belt. "Vanessa Tate is an alias, sir. Her real name is Veronica Valerius. She's wanted for 3 counts of marriage fraud, embezzlement, and identity theft in Massachusetts and Rhode Island." Rylan staggered back, hitting his knees against the pew behind him. "Marriage fraud? But you're what, sir?" the detective asked, pausing as he cuffed Vanessa's hands behind her back. The sequins scratched against the metal. Rylan looked at Charlotte. He looked at her parents, who were staring at him with a mixture of horror and vindication. He looked at the hundreds of guests witnessing his ruin. We're just colleagues, Rylan mumbled, the lie feeble and dying. That's not what you told the jeweler last week, Veronica said with a cruel laugh as the officer turned her around. Tell them about the ring, Rylan. Tell them about the penthouse deposit. The church gasped again, a collective intake of breath that sucked the oxygen from the room. Charlotte felt her knees give way. She sat down hard on the altar steps, her navy dress pooling around her. The ring. Rylan had told her he was cutting back on expenses. He had cancelled their anniversary trip to Italy because money was tight with the market fluctuations. "Get her out of here!" Lucas shouted, his patience snapping. As the police dragged Veronica away, she twisted her head back toward Rylan. "You were the easiest mark yet, Richie. You were so desperate to feel important, I barely had to try. Enjoy your wife." The doors slammed shut. Silence returned to St. Jude is, but it was a different kind of silence. It was the silence of a bomb crater. Rylan stood alone in the aisle. The spotlight was on him now. Harsh and unforgiving, he looked towards the altar, toward Charlotte. "Charlotte," he croaked. He took a step forward. "Honey, I didn't know. I was scammed. I'm a victim here." Charlotte stood up. She looked at her sister, Emily, whose eyes were filled with tears of rage on Charlotte's behalf. She looked at her father, whose fists were clenched so tight his knuckles were white. She walked down the steps of the altar. She walked down the aisle, past the rows of gaping guests. She stopped 3 feet from Rylan. "A victim?" Charlotte asked. Her voice was steady, clearer than it had been in years. "Yes," Rylan pleaded, his hands reaching out. "She lied to me. She manipulated me. You heard the cop. She's a professional criminal. I'm innocent." "Innocent of fraud, maybe," Charlotte said, her voice rising. "But you just admitted to buying her a ring. You admitted to a penthouse. You brought her here, to my sister's wedding, in a wedding dress, and sat her in front of my family while treating me like a servant." She pulled the gold band off her finger. It felt heavy, burdened with 10 years of subtle neglects, of work-late excuses, of being called insecure. "She may be a con artist, Rylan," Charlotte said, dropping the ring. It hit the stone floor with a sharp ping that echoed through the cathedral. "But you are a traitor, and that is worse." She turned to the groomsmen. "Please escort my husband out. He is disturbing the peace." Rylan's mouth fell open. "Charlotte, you can't do this here. Think of the scandal." "The scandal happened when you walked in the door," she said coldly. 2 of Lucas's friends, burly and eager for an excuse, grabbed Rylan by the arms. "Let go of me. I'm the brother-in-law," Rylan screamed as they dragged him backward. "Not anymore," Charlotte's father said from his pew, his voice like granite. As the doors closed on Rylan's pleading face, Charlotte took a deep breath. She turned back to the altar. She looked at Father Thomas, who was wiping his forehead with a handkerchief. "I am so sorry, Father," Charlotte said. "I am so sorry, Emily." Emily ran down and hugged her sister. "Don't you dare apologize. Are you okay?" Charlotte looked at the closed doors. For the first time in forever, the knot in her stomach was gone. "I think," Charlotte said, a small, sad smile touching her lips, "I'm finally free." Father Thomas cleared his throat. "Well," he said, adjusting his glasses, "the liturgy tells us that the truth shall set you free, though I usually prefer it doesn't happen during the opening hymn." A ripple of nervous laughter went through the crowd. The tension broke. "Shall we proceed?" Father Thomas asked Lucas and Emily. "I believe we have a marriage to celebrate. A real one." The wedding went on, but the real drama was only just beginning, because Rylan wasn't the type of man to go quietly, and Veronica Valerius hadn't played her last card. The reception was a blur. People tried to be polite, but the whispers were everywhere. "Did you hear about the ring?" Did you hear she was wanted in 3 states? Poor Charlotte. Charlotte left early. She couldn't handle the pitying looks. She took a cab home. Rylan had the car keys, but the groomsman had thrown them into the church fountain, a detail that gave her a grim sense of satisfaction. When she arrived at the house, it was dark. She expected Rylan to be there, drunk and raging, but the house was empty. She walked into the kitchen and saw a note on the counter. It wasn't an apology. It was a printout of a bank transfer. Transfer failed. Insufficient funds. Charlotte frowned. She logged into their joint account on her phone. 0. She checked the savings. 0. She checked the investment portfolio. Empty. Panic, cold and sharp, spiked in her chest. She called the bank, navigating the automated menus with trembling fingers until she got a human. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Anderson," the teller said. Mr. Anderson liquidated the accounts 3 days ago. He wired the funds to an offshore holding company. He said it was for a business acquisition. Charlotte dropped the phone. The penthouse. The ring. It wasn't just his money he was spending on Veronica. It was theirs. It was her inheritance from her grandmother. It was the down payment for the house they were supposed to buy next year. He had drained them dry. The front door unlocked. Charlotte spun around, grabbing a heavy ceramic vase from the counter. Rylan walked in. He looked disheveled. His tuxedo was stained, his tie missing. He smelled of scotch and rain. He saw Charlotte and stopped. He didn't look sorry. He looked furious. "You humiliated me," he said, his voice a low growl. "In front of the Darrows, in front of my business partners. You stole our money," Charlotte said, gripping the vase. "You gave it to her." Rylan laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "I didn't give it to her. I invested it. We were going to double it. She had a connection in crypto." He trailed off, realizing how stupid it sounded out loud. "You liquidated our life savings for a con woman you met 6 months ago," Charlotte said, stepping forward. "You are bankrupt, Rylan. And I'm filing for divorce in the morning." Rylan's face twisted. "You can't leave me. You have nothing. I took it all. If you leave, you're on the street." "I have my job," Charlotte said. "I have my family." "Your family," Rylan sneered. "Your mother has always hated me. You think they'll help you? You're damaged goods, Charlotte. A 34-year-old divorcee whose husband left her for a younger, hotter woman. You're a cliché." "And you," Charlotte said, her voice deadly calm, "are an accomplice to a felony." Rylan froze. "The police detective gave me his card," Charlotte lied. She hadn't gotten a card, but she knew enough from watching crime shows. "He asked if I knew about the financial transfers. He thinks you weren't just a victim, Rylan. He thinks you were laundering money for her." Fear flickered in Rylan's eyes. "That's insane. I didn't know." "Prove it," Charlotte said. "She's in custody. What do you think she's telling them right now to cut a deal? Do you think she's protecting you, or do you think she's telling them that you were the mastermind?" Rylan backed up against the door. The arrogance was cracking, revealing the cowardice underneath. "She wouldn't," he whispered. "She's a professional liar, Rylan. She'll say whatever keeps her out of prison. And since you're the one who signed the wire transfers—" Charlotte let the sentence hang. Rylan looked at his hands. He looked at the door. "I need to leave," he said. "I need to get a lawyer." "You do that," Charlotte said. "But get out of my house. This deed is in my name. My parents bought it before we married. It's marital property. Get out." Charlotte raised the vase. Rylan looked at her, really looked at her, and saw something he hadn't seen in years. He saw the woman who had once backpacked across Europe alone. He saw the woman who had graduated top of her class. He saw strength. He turned and fled into the rain. Charlotte locked the door. She slid the deadbolt. Then she put the security chain on. She walked to the kitchen, put the vase down, and slid to the floor. She didn't cry. She felt a strange, buzzing energy. She picked up her phone. She didn't call a lawyer. Not yet. She called the one person who could help her find out exactly where the money went before Rylan could hide the rest. "Hello?" a sleepy voice answered. "Charlotte? It's 2 a.m. "Uncle Martin," Charlotte said. Martin was the black sheep of the family, a forensic accountant who worked for the government before being fired for being too good at bending the rules. "I need a favor, a big one. Rylan stole everything." On the other end of the line, the rustling of sheets stopped. The voice became sharp, alert. "Give me his laptop password," Martin said. "It's Vanessa 123, Charlotte said, guessing. "Try success," Martin said. "Guys like him are predictable." Charlotte walked into Rylan's home office. She opened his laptop. She typed in, "Success, access granted." "I'm in," she said. "Good," Martin said. "Now let's go hunting. By the time the sun comes up, we're going to know where every cent is. And Charlotte? Yeah? We're going to get it back. All of it. And we're going to make sure he ends up with nothing but the suit on his back." Charlotte looked at the glowing screen, her eyes reflecting the blue light. "Let's work," she said. The sun rose over Seattle, casting a pale, unforgiving light into Charlotte's living room. The floor was covered in paper, bank statements, printed emails, and tax returns dating back 5 years. Uncle Martin sat in Rylan's ergonomic leather chair, a cigarette unlit in his mouth. Charlotte didn't allow smoking in the house, a rule he respected only by chewing on the filter. He looked like a bulldog who had just smelled a steak. "He's sloppy," Martin grunted, tapping a thick finger against the laptop screen. "Arrogant men are always sloppy. They think no one is watching." Charlotte placed a mug of black coffee next to him. "What did you find?" "Okay, so you know the investment he liquidated the savings for?" Martin pointed to a spreadsheet. "He didn't just wire it to an offshore account. He wired it to a shell company called Vesper Holdings in the Caymans. Guess who the registered agent is?" "Veronica?" Charlotte guessed. "Better. A guy named Julian. No, sorry, a guy named Stefano Rossi, a known associate of hers. But here is the kicker." Martin spun the laptop around. "Rylan didn't just empty your accounts. He took a loan against his 401k. He maxed out 3 credit cards in your name that you didn't know existed. And he borrowed $50,000 from the company account at his firm." Charlotte gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "He embezzled. From Henderson and Wright. They're merging today. If they find out—" "When they find out," Martin corrected. "The audit is automatic during a merger. He's a dead man walking, Char. He stole from his bosses to impress a woman who was stealing from him. It's almost poetic, if it wasn't so pathetic." "Can we get it back?" Charlotte asked, her voice trembling. "The house money. My grandmother's inheritance." Martin cracked his knuckles. "The wire to the Caymans is still pending. It takes 48 hours for international clearance on that size of a sum, especially over a weekend. It's Monday morning. We have until the banks open in Georgetown. I can flag it as fraudulent, but I need a police report number specifically for the embezzlement." "I can get that," Charlotte said, her eyes hardening. "But I need to go to his office." "He'll be there," Martin warned, trying to cover his tracks. "I know," Charlotte said. She stood up and walked to the closet. She pushed past the soft cardigans and sensible slacks she usually wore. She reached into the back and pulled out a sharp, charcoal grey power suit she hadn't worn since her last job interview 3 years ago. She put it on. It still fit. It fit perfectly. "I'm going to pay my husband a visit," Charlotte said. Downtown, the glass tower of Henderson and Wright gleamed in the sunlight. Rylan Anderson sat in his corner office, sweating through his shirt. He was frantically typing, trying to move numbers from column A to column B, trying to hide the $50,000 hole he had dug. He thought he could replace it before anyone noticed. He thought the returns on the crypto investment Veronica promised would be in by now. "She played me," his mind screamed. "She played me." But he couldn't focus on that. He had to save his career. The partners were meeting in the boardroom in 20 minutes to sign the merger deal. His office door flew open. Rylan jumped. "Vanessa, I told you to—" It wasn't Vanessa or Veronica. It was Charlotte. She strode into the office, past his stunned administrative assistant, the real one, a 60-year-old woman named Brenda. Charlotte looked formidable. Her hair was pulled back tight. Her makeup was sharp. She didn't look like the wife who waited at home with dinner. She looked like an executioner. "Charlotte," Rylan stammered, standing up. "What are you doing here? You can't be here. I have a meeting." "Sit down, Rylan," Charlotte said. She didn't yell. She closed the door behind her and locked it. "I don't have time for your drama," Rylan sneered, trying to regain control. "I'm dealing with a crisis." "You created the crisis," she replied calmly. She tossed a manila folder onto his desk. It slid across the mahogany surface and stopped right in front of him. "That is a printout of the unauthorized transfer you made from the client trust fund last Thursday, 10:15 a.m. Rylan's face went grey. How did you get that?" "You use the same password for everything. Success. It's ironic, really." Charlotte leaned her hands on the desk, looming over him. "Uncle Martin found it, and I'm on my way to show it to Mr. Henderson." "No!" Rylan lunged forward, grabbing her wrist. "You can't! They'll fire me. They'll prosecute. I'll go to jail, Charlotte." "Let go of me," she said, her voice ice-cold. Rylan dropped her hand, panting. "Charlotte, please, listen, I can fix this. I just need time. If you report this, the money is gone forever. If I keep my job, I can pay you back. I swear." "You can't pay me back," she said. "You have nothing. But I can stop the wire transfer to the Caymans if I have proof the funds were stolen. I need you to sign a confession. Right now." She pulled a document from her bag. "If I sign that, I'm admitting to a felony," Rylan whispered. "If you don't sign it," Charlotte said, "I walk into the boardroom right now. The partners are all there, aren't they? I'll hand it to them personally. Then the police come here. If you sign it, I take it to the bank first. I get my money back. Then I give it to the police. You get maybe 2 hours of a head start." Rylan looked at the door. He looked at the document. He looked at Charlotte. He realized, with a sinking horror, that he had underestimated her for 10 years. He thought she was weak because she was kind. He didn't realize that kindness was a restraint she had chosen to wear, not a lack of strength. He picked up his pen. His hand shook so badly he could barely write. He signed his name. Charlotte snatched the paper back. "Goodbye, Rylan." She turned to leave. "Charlotte?" he asked, his voice breaking. "Did you ever love me?" She stopped at the door, her hand on the knob. She didn't look back. "I did," she said. "I loved the man I thought you were. But he never existed. He was just a costume you wore until you found a better audience." She walked out. As she reached the elevator, she saw Mr. Henderson walking down the hall with the merger team. He smiled at her. "Charlotte, good to see you. Is Rylan ready for the big day?" Charlotte smiled, a bright, dazzling smile that didn't reach her eyes. "He's in his office, Mr. Henderson. But I think he might be feeling a little under the weather. You might want to check on him." She stepped into the elevator. As the doors closed, she checked her watch. 1 hour to get to the bank. Behind her, in the office, Rylan was frantically stuffing things into a box. But he was too late. Security was already on the way up. Not because of Charlotte, but because the bank flagged the withdrawal 5 minutes ago. Charlotte walked out of the building just as 2 police cruisers pulled up to the curb. She put on her sunglasses and kept walking. The visitation room at the county detention center was cold, smelling of stale coffee and industrial cleaner. Charlotte sat on one side of the thick plexiglass, her hands folded neatly in her lap. On the other side, wearing an oversized orange jumpsuit that clashed horribly with her complexion, sat Veronica Valerius. Without the makeup, the champagne gown, and the expensive jewelry, Veronica looked younger, rougher. Her hair was messy, and there were dark circles under her eyes, but her expression was defiant. She picked up the phone receiver. Charlotte did the same. "Well," Veronica said, her voice tinny through the speaker. "The wife, I expected you sooner. Come to gloat?" "I don't have time to gloat, Veronica," Charlotte said. "I'm here for information." Veronica laughed, leaning back. "Why should I give you anything? Your husband is the one who got me caught. Idiot couldn't keep his mouth shut at the church." "Rylan is in custody," Charlotte said. "He was arrested 2 hours ago for embezzlement. He's claiming he was a victim. He says you masterminded the whole thing, and he was just a love-struck fool." Veronica's eyes narrowed. "He's lying. He knew. He wanted in on the scam. He gave me the access codes to his firm's accounts voluntarily." "I know," Charlotte said, "but right now it's his word against yours, and he's a wealthy, white corporate executive with a clean record. You have a history." Veronica glared at the glass. She knew the game. She knew how the system worked. "What do you want?" Veronica snapped. "My money," Charlotte said. "I stopped the transfer to the Caymans, but there's still $200,000 missing that he gave you in cash and jewelry over the last 6 months. I want to know where it is." "And if I tell you?" "I speak to the district attorney," Charlotte said. "I tell them that Rylan wasn't a victim, but a co-conspirator. I hand over the emails I found on his laptop that prove he knew about your past. It shifts the heat. You go from predator to partner. It might knock 5 years off your sentence." Veronica studied Charlotte's face. She looked for the bluff. She didn't find one. "You really hate him, don't you?" Veronica murmured. "You hate him more than you hate me." "You're a shark, Veronica," Charlotte said. "Sharks bite. It's nature. But he was the boat captain who threw me into the water. That's personal," Veronica smirked. A flash of respect crossed her face. "Okay," Veronica said. She leaned closer to the glass. "The jewelry, the ring, the necklace, the watch. It's in a safety deposit box at the train station. Locker 402. The code is 0404. His birthday. Narcissist." Charlotte wrote it down. "And the cash?" Charlotte asked. "There is no cash," Veronica said. "He didn't give me cash. He used it to pay off his gambling debts." Charlotte froze. "Gambling debts?" "Oh, you didn't know?" Veronica's smile widened, cruel and genuine. "Richie didn't just want me for my looks. He needed me. He was in the hole for big money with some bad people in Vegas. He thought I was rich. He was trying to scam me at first, thinking he could marry me and use my fortune to pay off his bookies. When he found out I was a scammer too, well, we decided to team up. He was stealing from you to pay the interest, Charlotte. The merger work trips? He was at the casinos." Charlotte felt the blood drain from her face. The late nights, the mood swings, the missing funds over the years. It wasn't just a mistress. It was an addiction. "He played us both," Veronica said, "but he was sloppy. In the lining of his briefcase, the brown leather one, there's a ledger, a little black book. It lists every bet, every loss, and every dollar he stole from you to cover it. If you find that book, you nail him for everything." Charlotte stood up. Her legs felt shaky, but her mind was racing. "Thank you," Charlotte said. "Hey," Veronica said, tapping the glass, "don't forget our deal. You bury him." "Oh, don't worry," Charlotte said, hanging up the phone. "I intend to." Charlotte walked out of the jail into the bright afternoon sun. She felt sick, but she also felt a strange sense of clarity. Rylan hadn't just cheated on her. He hadn't just left her for a younger woman. He had been drowning for years, and he had been using her as a flotation device, pushing her head under the water so he could breathe. She hailed a taxi. "Where to, lady?" the driver asked. "The police station," Charlotte said. "I have evidence to drop off. And then, the train station." She had the location of the jewelry. That was at least $50,000. It was a start. But the ledger was the key. She took out her phone and dialed Uncle Martin. "Martin," she said, "don't let the police take the brown briefcase from the house. Ryland's lawyer is going to try to claim his personal effects. You need to get that briefcase before they do." "I'm at the house now," Martin said, his voice tense. "But Charlotte, we have a problem." "What?" "Someone broke in," Martin said. "The back door is smashed. The office has been tossed." Charlotte's heart stopped. "Is the briefcase there?" "I don't see it," Martin said, "but whoever did this wasn't the police. They tore the drywall out. They were looking for something specific." "The bookies," Charlotte whispered. "Veronica said he owed dangerous people. They want their money." "Charlotte, you need to get safe," Martin said urgently. "If they didn't find the money here, and Rylan is in jail—" "They'll come for me," she finished. "Where are you?" "I'm in a cab, downtown." "Go to the Darrows," Martin commanded. "Go to Lucas and Emily's place. They have private security. Do not come home." Charlotte hung up. She looked out the rear window. A black SUV was 2 cars back. It changed lanes when she did. "Driver," Charlotte said, her voice steady. "Change of plans. Take me to the Darrow estate on the North Shore. And please, drive fast." The driver looked in the rearview mirror, saw her face, and nodded. He gunned the engine. The chase was on. But Charlotte wasn't just running away. She was leading them exactly where she wanted them. Because Lucas Darrow's family didn't just have money. They had influence. And they had a security team that made the police look like mall cops. She was bringing the war to a fortress. The taxi tires screeched against the asphalt as they wound up the North Shore Drive. In the rearview mirror, the black SUV was gaining, its grille filling the view like a predator's maw. Charlotte gripped the door handle, her heart hammering against her ribs. "Just get to the gates," she shouted. The Darrow estate loomed ahead, a fortress of brick and iron. As the taxi shot through the opening, the heavy gates began to swing shut. The black SUV skidded on the wet pavement, stopping inches from the locking bars. 2 men in leather jackets stepped out, staring dead-eyed through the metal. They weren't police. They were the investors Rylan owed money to. The Vipers. Lucas Darrow met Charlotte on the steps, flanked by armed private security. "You're safe here," he promised. "My father's team will handle the perimeter." Inside the library, Uncle Martin was pacing. He looked grim. "I checked the house, Char. It's a wreck. They tore up the floorboards looking for the ledger, but they didn't find it." "Veronica said he kept it in the lining of his brown briefcase," Charlotte said, her hands shaking as she accepted a glass of brandy from Emily. "It wasn't in the office," Martin said, "and he didn't have it when he was arrested." Charlotte closed her eyes, retracing the steps of that morning. Rylan's arrogance, his insistence on driving, the work files. "The car," Charlotte whispered, her eyes snapping open. "He insisted on driving the Mercedes so he could show off. He put the briefcase in the trunk." Emily gasped. "The car the groomsman pushed into the fountain?" "It's at the impound lot," Lucas realized. "It hasn't been processed yet. If the bookies figure that out, they'll burn it," Martin finished, "and the evidence dies with it." "I'm going," Lucas said, grabbing his keys. "I know the lot manager. I'll get it." 3 hours of agonizing silence followed. The rain lashed against the library windows as Charlotte watched the driveway. Finally, Lucas returned, carrying a sodden, dripping leather object. Martin slit the lining with a pocket knife. Inside, wrapped in plastic, was a small black notebook. Charlotte opened it. It was a road map of ruin. Dates, amounts, and names. The Greek, Viper, Lucky. Rylan hadn't just been embezzling. He was laundering money for organized crime syndicates to cover millions in gambling debts. "This is it," Martin whispered. "This is a RICO case. This puts him away for 20 years. Or," he looked at the skate, "it gets him killed." Charlotte closed the book. The fear that had gripped her for days evaporated, replaced by the cold, hard steel of leverage. "Call the detective," she said. "I'm going to make a trade." The interrogation room was stark and cold. Ryland sat handcuffed to the table, looking like a ghost of the man who had strutted into the wedding. When he saw Charlotte, he slumped with relief. "Charlotte," he breathed. "Thank God. You're here to help? It's all a misunderstanding." Charlotte didn't speak. She simply slid the black notebook onto the metal table. Ryland's face went corpse white. He recoiled as if she had placed a live cobra in front of him. Where did you get that?" "You left it in the trunk," she said coolly. "The bookies know I have it. They're outside. They want their money, Ryland. Or they want blood." "You have to destroy it," Ryland hissed, sweat beading on his forehead. "If they find out I kept records, they'll kill me." "I know," Charlotte said. "So here is your choice. Option A, I walk out of here with this book. The Vipers will eventually come for me, so I'll have to give it to them to save myself. They'll see you betrayed them. You won't last a night in general population." Ryland trembled. "And option B?" "Option B," Charlotte said, nodding to the two-way mirror. "I hand this to the FBI agents standing behind that glass. You enter witness protection. You lose your name, your money, your reputation, and your life here. You go to prison, but you live." "And what do you get?" Ryland sneered, tears of rage in his eyes. "I've already cut a deal with the district attorney," Charlotte replied, standing up. "In exchange for the evidence that brings down the syndicate, the government releases the liens on my house. I get my grandmother's inheritance back from your frozen assets, and I get an expedited divorce." She knocked on the glass. The door opened, and 2 federal agents stepped in. "He's all yours," Charlotte said. As she walked out, Ryland began to sob, the sound of a man who realized he had ceased to exist. 1 year later, the sun shone brightly over the Seattle skyline. In a bustling cafe, Charlotte closed a file folder. She wasn't just a survivor anymore. She was a partner at a forensic accounting firm, specializing in finding hidden assets for spouses in high-conflict divorces. Emily sat across from her, bouncing her baby boy on her lap. "So did you hear about Ryland?" Charlotte took a sip of her champagne. "You mean Bob? I heard he's managing a Cinnabon in Nebraska. Or maybe it was Idaho. He has to report to a federal handler every week and look over his shoulder for the rest of his life." She touched her ring finger. It was bare, healed and free. "He's a ghost," Charlotte smiled, looking out at the city that was now hers to conquer. "But me? I'm finally living." And that is the story of how a single wedding invitation unraveled a web of lies that destroyed a criminal empire. Charlotte thought she was losing her husband that day, but she actually gained her freedom. It's a reminder that sometimes the worst betrayal is actually a blessing in disguise. If you suspect something is wrong in your relationship, trust your gut and always check the bank accounts. What did you think of Charlotte's revenge? Did Ryland deserve a worse fate, or is living in fear the ultimate punishment? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you'll never miss a story. We have a crazy one coming up next week about a mother-in-law who tried to cancel the honeymoon. You won't want to miss it. Thanks for watching, and stay safe out there.